Welcome to a new episode of my podcast, Trends, Innovation and Business Model.
And today's topic is a very interesting and a very high level topic. It's about employer value proposition. It's a purpose-driven, human-centric world. Organizations have to be more purpose-driven and human-centric. And my today's guests are Markus Kramer, who's founder and managing partner of Brand Affairs, and Daniel Müller, a high-reputed Mercuri Urval partner. Welcome, Markus, and welcome, Daniel.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
But probably you give some background about yourself.
Markus, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. And where I fit or what I do is I work with brands and their leaders, generally their organizations, to help provide orientation. Mm-hmm. It's primarily around evolution. Where do I go? What do I do? And why do I do what I do, so to speak? So the purpose link there. But that's primarily the first and foremost where we fit and where we help. And then we also help activate on communication within organizations and also outside of organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, we as Mercuri Urval, we are actually convinced that people make organizations successful. And therefore, we help our clients to find, select, and also develop the right leaders they need to be successful.
Yeah, that's great. And it brings us more or less direct into the topic, means in this really complex world, everything is changing. Everybody's speaking of an employee journey. And what you guys did is more or less a study and research about the employer value proposition. What is that? What is that about?
An employer value proposition, I mean, I don't know, Daniel, maybe I'll jump in here very briefly or you can jump as well, but I think we have to distinguish between an employer value proposition and an employer value or an employer brand, so to speak. But either way, if you look at a brand, a corporate brand, which all of us have in one way, shape or form, underneath, subordinated almost, we also have what we call an employer brand. And an employer brand is really taking the corporate brand and articulating it in a way that is meaningful for employees so that they feel connected, well, hopefully attracted to an employer, that they feel more connected, and that they also links to the culture and the identity within. So this directly influences things like my cohesion, my alignment of my employee population, but also efficiencies. Ultimately, through employer brand, we also want to drive a business benefit, and that generally manifests in having, not just good talent and being attractive to good talent and they staying loyal, but also it helps to create a very efficient way of getting the most from the people we work with. Mm-hmm. So this is on the employer brand. It's a subset of your corporate brand. And the employer value proposition is really, let's face it, right? In today's world, it's really hard to differentiate. And the world of USPs, unique selling propositions, where you are truly different, whatever product or service you ultimately sell, it's really hard. So an employer value proposition is a configuration of values. We look at value systems and how we configure our own values, our company values, perhaps, in a unique way, so that it is attractive, so that it creates cohesion, so that it does help build a culture that ultimately differentiates. Because a culture you can't replicate as easily. You can't go to any Far East country and just replicate my culture. And therefore, this EVP or employee value proposition is a very powerful tool as part of your overall effort to build a strong culture. So this is just to place into context kind of employer brand and also employer value proposition, what these terms actually mean and how they fit.
Yeah, I think that's, when I understand this correctly, I think culture is a big buzzword, but it's more or less kind of, it's the base of the experience you made in the past and what assumptions you're taking from that. But the value, the common value between employee and employer, the common why you're doing a mission, I think that's what you're trying to carve out there. Sorry, Daniel, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's just perfectly said from Markus, but in the end, it's just the answer to the why. Why should someone join an organization, or why should someone stay in an organization?
Yeah. And especially you see it in Germany, but probably as well in Switzerland, you have a lack of subject matter experts, of lots of people. And sometimes, talking for Germany, it's not so much about there's a lack of interest in joining a company, because out of this lacking value proposition for an employee.
No, it's very true. I think this is also partly what drove us to co-collaborate on this study, to really link the two and say, well, there's a general recognition that culture eats strategy for breakfast, as Peter Drucker says. We believe this is true more than ever, because it does help to create differentiation in the marketplace. But then how do employers do, right, in that space? And how do employees see their employers, how well they do? So I think this study in its universe is actually a very nice way to put the finger on an extremely hot topic.
And what means we somehow described already why you did this study, more or less to analyze what makes an employer attractive and how you can create a space people wants to join. But how did you do this study? What did you do exactly?
Yeah, Markus, if I may. So, sure. like you mentioned, Michael, we just wanted to have a closer look at the status quo and really having a pragmatic approach to the situation here in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. So on one hand side, we were talking to employers. We did expert interviews with 29 experts on that topic, which were mainly working in HR or being a CEO or founder. We talked to startup companies, we talked to SMEs, we talked to big corporates, just to get their idea, their feeling, what are they doing concretely, what does that mean to them, since when are they dealing with the topic. And on the other hand, we were asking over 600 employees about their opinion. What do they really want to have? What do they really want to see? And then we just, combined it, and we wanted to identify some gaps and really put the finger in and see, okay, what's the situation there?
Yeah. And what kind of typical questions you ask the employee? Because it's a very tricky thing, this typical research, how you find out what people really want. Just to give you don't have to give insight into your secrets, but just for the audience, for their interest.
So in total, we had 43 characters who are describing an employer brand, so to say. And you could cluster them into 7 different topics. For example, atmosphere. For example, work-life balance. For example, your boss. For example, just the topic around money and compensation and benefits and so on. And in total, there were 43 of these characters, and we were asking both parties, and then we, combined them.
Because I'm coming more from agile organizations or the transformation, and there's those 5 dimensions here. Definitely one is organizational design. It's workspace, put some fruits and whatever. It's kind of workspace, but you need as well kind of a space where you can be focused, where you can go collaborate face to face, you work from home, whatever. That's kind of workspace thing. The old Matrix organization or the Spotify organization, whatever, the transformation to that. But definitely as well leadership. And with leadership, there's typical of the 5 functions of teams, and there's trust will come very quickly to culture, and I guess around those questions you clustered it.
Exactly. Yeah. We had the 7 big clusters, so to say.
And Markus and Daniel, what were your was the key findings, the takeaways for people?
I don't know, Daniel. Okay, I'll happily talk to perhaps just the 3 key areas we identified with this. And one is leadership, and it's the idea of being genuine, being fair, being inspiring. But this is, to be honest, of course, leadership's important, but it's not fundamentally new. So, if you think about where can companies, or where can you as an HR director or a company also put your finger on, is certainly on systems, infrastructure, processes for open exchange, for 360 feedback, for making leadership a topic, making it also measurable and tangible in a way that it creates transparency, and also all in the spirit of fostering progress, of advancing the organization overall, is one thing that came out really clearly. Another one that came out really clearly is this idea of perspective. So show possibilities, career options, development, continued education, but also involvement in meaningful work, in exciting projects, for example, or perhaps long-term incentives. And the third one that came up really strongly, and here we jump ahead a little bit, of course, is this idea of culture and corporate values, and how and what you do to communicate these. So, how does that manifest every day, that culture is lived and tangible? It's something so soft and subjective. So anchoring it around a core purpose, so the very reason why you're here. If you don't already have it, certainly one of the recommendations we would put forward is that as companies as they continue to evolve in the 21st century, the notion of purpose and who you are and why you do what you do is critical to provide meaning to people who work for you, and hopefully for a long time. Because, there's probably times where people look beyond the monetary compensation. For sure, the younger the generations, the more this notches up towards, I want to find meaning in what I do. So make sure you have a clear answer to this is certainly one of the clear outcomes of the study. But perhaps, Daniel, I don't know if you want to expand perhaps the depth a little bit more in what we found as well.
Maybe in addition to that big, culture topic, I mean, in the end, what is culture? It is always an outcome of behavior in the end. And that perfectly matches the first key finding we had, which is leadership. And there, you remember the 7 topics we identified and double-checked, and there was actually the biggest gap. So companies think they are doing just great in terms of leadership, and their superiors behave just perfectly, but employees do not perceive it like that. And there we really had the biggest gap. And that perfectly, matches the culture thing.
I think what I experience with my clients is lots of the buy-in thing, because you have an old decision-making process within silos. The decision is not made where the information is. People are not really asked. Means even the decision, it has not to be democracy, but at least you have to ask the people involved. And if they could have their say in, then the commitment, the buy-in is quite high, beside the values and the other stuff. But come back to leadership and culture all the same. As you live it, really the behavior. It's not on the written mission or the written vision. The mission statement is a piece of paper. You have to live it. I see that.
Very, very important point you just made, because that was another outcome in the culture context, that you have all these values written on your homepage and in the brochure, but the employees do not really perceive that they are lived.
Yeah, exactly, because they're not part of it. Means you have to derive visions, sometimes better probably to include more of the whole organization. It's not always leadership to have to think, I know the way for the next 20 years and please follow me. That's a difficult approach in today's time.
Especially nowadays.
And what would you, means, in the end, what is your recommendation? What is what should companies, what should organizations do?
Markus, you want to start with the culture purpose area, and I go on to the leadership topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the first thing is the recognition that culture really is a competitive differentiator. It's a business question, right? It's a fundamental question, not just to kind of, is it nice to have a good culture, yes or no? It's a fundamental question, I would argue, for survival in the future. Attracting the right talent, making sure people stay loyal, but also connecting our culture that is increasingly transparent and can be felt outside, accessible to the outside world, society at large, so to speak. Culture is huge, and so our recommendation would really be to think deeply of what drives culture and how you embed cohesion. we call it shared and aligned purpose, but it's the starting point, your very reason why you're actually doing what you do, and be clear. It's as you said earlier on, Michael, it's not a mission statement. This is more of a spiritual energy. It's a feeling, but you need to capture it somehow and make it tangible for people to align around. And it's not by learning, 5 paragraphs by heart. It needs to fit in a really short, really contextualized, 5 words or less type of articulation. And make it tangible, live it every day, and radiate it from within and the inside out. So recommendation 1, if you don't know how to do it, or if you don't have that within, or it's not clear enough, it's probably the starting point to look to build strong cultures. This is the first one, but Daniel, over to you.
Yeah, and the second advice would maybe, to put it very, very simple, invest in your people. Because again, it's all about leadership, and one of the gaps we identified within these 43 measures was that employees do not really feel inspired by their leaders and by their bosses. So they really want to have inspirational leaders. And that's on one hand side, the leadership aspect as such, but on the other hand side, we also identified a very, very big gap in terms of career perspective. Employees do not really see perspectives for them. You have maybe also in HR some programs you could offer your employees, do an MBA, do an, French course, whatever, but that's just not enough. You really need to deep dive into the individual, what your people really want to have. And let's be pragmatic here. I mean, in the end, it could be a simple advice. Hey, have a look at these TED Talks, for example. It doesn't really always need to be a very intense, huge, and expensive program.
No, I think I agree. I see that, especially old companies, this leadership is always as well for the development of people is you get these courses, but there's always a ceiling because it's not based by a growth mindset. Okay, it's another buzzword, but it's a constant learn. You have to improve yourself, your skills. You have to adapt skills, different methods in different situations, and people are evolving. And in this old functional silos, careers are much more difficult, especially in today's time where you have lots of uncertainty and you need much more cross-functional work together, I think. And I agree completely, but sorry, I interrupted. I like to think a little bit with you.
Yeah. I mean, what you just mentioned, the silos, that's definitely the old world. And I mean, all things we identified and we were just discussing the last minutes, they're really applying to the, let's say, new world, which already adapted to the VUCA world we're living in.
Exactly.
Silo world is definitely over.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings always back to the big thing of this purpose, the why. Means why is that so important for companies? Means we touched it several times, but how would you what is your suggestion for companies to get a purposeful meaning for what this company is doing? What is your takeaway companies should do?
I think that's for you, Markus.
Yeah, this is definitely one for me. So there's two things here to unpack. Firstly is why is it important? And secondly, well, how do you go about it? I think the first one, why is it important? Again, I really stress this. I can't stress it enough. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Peter Drucker said it's true more than ever. And so it's your competitive differentiation longer term, whatever industry you are in. It's a war for talent. And if you don't have an answer for that, then it's a increasingly tough future for you, I would argue. Purpose sits at the very heart of what culture is and how it's shaped because it provides meaning. And in a world where we have generations coming into the workplace or already in the workplace, what differentiates, I would say, the employee to come from the employee we have today is as banal as it sounds, as simple as it sounds, is speed. It's acceleration, and speed and acceleration does a lot of things. It doesn't just accelerate how we communicate today virtually in this live stream in times of COVID evermore, but it also means that people travel a lot quicker up, and up by that I mean on the hierarchy of needs. So this idea of being safe and having food and shelter where we live and most of us are, It's actually a given. So the next thing is, well, my physiological need, my social esteem, that's pretty much given through our schooling system as well. And what we see is people moving towards self-actualization a lot quicker than ever before. So all of a sudden you have the 25-year-old who says, I'm going on a sabbatical, right? Or I'm going independent, or I'm writing a book, I'm taking a year out. You don't wait until 65 to fulfill your dreams and aspirations. What's your answer? As an employer, you don't have I don't like it, please stay with me for the next 15 years. You have to have answers to a completely VUCA world or a changed world. And I think that's the reason why you should think about heart, on what meaning you provide, and purpose is a great way or a great catalyst to make that tangible and transport it. To the second point, and then I'll stop, is that's how do you do it? I don't think we have the time to go through that on how to do it. I can only highly recommend to
I think the audience will come back to you anyway, because
hopefully so. Please do. But if not, I mean, there's great resources out there. Of course, you can check out. I wrote a book on the topic. Feel free to check that out and read and listen to the podcasts and to the available resources. It's not rocket science. Let's phrase it like this. I don't think we have to overcomplicate our world to bring purpose into our lives. It's not rocket science, but it's definitely a little bit more than the few minutes we have left here to answer that question. So I'll pass that back to Daniel, perhaps, for the rest of it.
Maybe just to undermine the point you mentioned, Markus, or let's say the buzzword you mentioned, war for talents. I mean, it's really a buzzword since, I think, decades already. Everybody's talking about it, and no one can hear it anymore. But let's face it and have a look at the data. Today's workforce, at least in our Western societies, is mainly Generation X. People born in the 60s and 70s. Yep. And what we will face within the next years, starting this year 2020, all these baby boomers are going to retire. That's just starting now. And what we had in the past was just the tip of the iceberg. Yep. The next years to come, then we really will see what war for talents mean. Yep. And people are actually not aware of that, because many people say, war for talents, come on, such a hot topic since many, many years. Yes, but it was actually not really a hot topic. Because again, look at the data. It will become a hot topic.
Yeah, I think that this demographic, you have trends, you have evolving trends. Markus mentioned already the fractionation of a fractional society, means everybody can really show who he is. He wants to wait till 70 years to write his memoirs or books, and you have this demographic trends, means the baby boomers are gone. You have needs much more agile workplaces and the kind of freedom where you can work on different things on the same time. And, but we don't go to this topic of trend analysis and how to do that, but it's very interconnected, everything. And I think your study and research, if the audience is interested, I think that's definitely how they can get into contact with you. Is it open to the public, or how do you do that?
It's somehow it's open. Yeah, of course. I mean, we have much more data, and we have a lot of outcomes actually to share. Just reach out to us. Yeah.
Okay.
Can we share our contact details? Is this possible?
Yes, please. I will share anyway. I put on the description your contact details, how to contact you, because the LinkedIn contact was already in the invitation for the audience. Please don't hesitate and contact Daniel and Markus straight away. I think it's so very valuable insights you gave us about this employer branding, about this employer proposition. Probably the last words is for you both. Who wants to start, Daniel or Markus?
The last words, well, I would encourage everybody to, if you haven't heard or know what is meant by embedding purpose into your organization, just Google it. Just get started on the journey.
That's great. Yeah?
Well, let's face it, we live in a complex and somehow crazy world, but in the end, people follow people.
Yes, it's all about people. It's about relationship. Every business is relationship, and you need an honest, trustworthy relationship. Otherwise, the relationship is broken. And
Built on trust.
Exactly. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Markus. I think it was a great time I was allowed. I had the honor to spend with you, and lots of good insights. Thank you very much.
Big fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.